back into Cult Film Cafe with me, one of your hosts, Jonathan, and I'm joined, as always, with my partner in crime, Kenzie McLean.
Hello there.
And on this episode, we have a new guest. It is the one and only Mr. Adam Donaldson.
Hello guys, how you doing?
So yeah, if you're not familiar with the podcast, we're just going to give you a wee rundown on what it's all about. We are exploring 100 must-see cult movies poster, where on each episode the guest gets to choose one of the films off the poster to come in and discuss it further to see whether it should be on the poster or not. So yeah, Adam, what film did you choose?
I've went for The Fifth Element.
Every 5,000 years.
Remove the shield.
When the three planets are in eclipse, the black hole like a door is open. Evil comes, spreading terror and chaos.
There's nothing that can stop this.
There is only one thing.
Perfect.
The Montechiwan have in their possession the only weapon to defeat evil. 4 elements. Gathered around a fifth. They're here.
Hello.
Corbin, sweetheart. You got broken fingers, you can't punch my number?
Hi, Mom.
Welcome on. Have a nice day.
Major Dallas, you're selected for a mission of the utmost importance.
What mission?
Save the world.
Is that thing solid?
Unbreakable.
Good.
Word of the stone.
I don't know. And even if I did know, I wouldn't tell somebody like you.
There's nowhere else to go.
Who in God's name would do such a thing?
Hang on.
So, on all podcasts, first question we normally ask is, why The Fifth Element out of all the films that you could have chosen?
Just when I looked through the list, it jumped out as a film that I've always enjoyed. So I thought, yeah, I'll do that one as a starter and see what the discussion is.
Yeah, weird one. We've already had a Luc Besson film on the podcast already, Leon, which me and Kenzie done ourselves. And spoiler alert, big fans of that particular film, both of us. So Kenzie, what about this? Is this a film? Please tell me you've seen this one before.
Now, this is a weird one because
They're all fucking weird for you,
I know
aren't
they are kind of all weird for me. I remember this film when I was very young. I remember seeing bits of it. I remember bits of the film. Particularly Big Bada Boom, that line at the part when Gary Oldman's testing the gun. Like, those parts I do remember from when I was a kid, but I don't remember watching the whole film. But I do remember little parts. So this was pretty much a fresh watch for me, because I don't remember really anything else about it. So yeah.
But how do you initially feel about it?
Well, I was watching it, and it made me think that I've just kind of realised that I'm not totally hugely into sci-fi, but don't worry, because I really like this one. I really like this film. I clearly like Luc Besson films, because I absolutely love Leon, and I really like this. Of course, I like Bruce Willis. he's probably one of my favorite, or if not my favorite kind of action star. And it's got Gary Oldman again. When he was in Leon, he both times he's just such a good actor and plays completely two different characters in these two different films. It's great, and I also love Milla Jovovich as well. So it's like a great cast for me.
Yeah, I agree. I think I've got to agree with that. I think the casting's really nice in this film. A good mix, like, of the famous and then some kind of lesser knowns. Just I think it's been really well done.
I think the cast in this film is top heavy, but there is a lot of faces that if you watch a lot of cinema that you'll be familiar with. Good casting though. I do agree with both of you. It is a well cast film. Gary Oldman's this kind of enigmatic figure when he was younger. He played a lot of these weird and wacky roles. He's now, as he became safe, probably, I think, in terms of what he does these days.
Is that the sort of thing you earn as an actor? You do these kind of roles, and then the more mature you get, the kind of get a safer role because you don't have to put yourself out there as much or be the weird one. But I think he's well done in this one. It's a good.
But possibly that is maybe you earn your stripes in these kind of smaller films. I don't know if I could call this a small film. I had a $90 million budget, which was a lot of money.
Yeah.
I mean, even today that would be quite a big budget, but back then in the mid to late 90s.
I read that it was it's the highest budget, or at the time anyway, it was the highest budget film that was outside of Hollywood.
Yeah.
So the highest, so the European film with the biggest budget.
Yeah.
It was for a long time, yeah. What kind of strikes me with this, though, is Luc Besson, the director and writer, started writing this story when he was 16.
Yeah, it's been it's a labour of love for him. He started writing it, changed bits. I think, did he get it rejected, or it was like people he showed it to and they changed the character, the storyline evolved. It's a labour of love for him, definitely.
Aye, because when the film came out, I think he was like 36, 38, somewhere in his late 30s. It's obviously big amount of time's passed. Very true. He initially wanted to get this project off the ground very early, but I think there was a lot of complications in it. I think he was gearing up to do this before he actually done Leon, which came out before this. But I think, like Adam said, there was problems, probably most specifically with the budget. I think he found it really difficult to find somebody to take on a project of that magnitude for the amount of money that he was looking at. Because he did have a lot of people attached early on that obviously went and created this kind of futuristic world. And I mean, I want to know what the costume budget was, because Jean-Paul Gaultier do all the costumes. I think I read somewhere it was like 900 costumes he'd done. He'd done all the extras and everything, and I'm like, he's a big fashion designer. If people listening don't know who he is, he probably got paid a pretty penny.
It must be a huge part of the budget for it, but again, I think that's part of the film, and it's one of the beautiful things about it is all the costume and how that looks throughout all the different scenes.
Yeah, I mean, it does add to the aesthetic of the overall movie, 100%. Mackenzie was kind of shocked when we said that he started writing this when he was 16.
Yeah, that completely. I didn't realise. I knew that he was trying to get it made for like a while, but I didn't realise he started writing it like so young. That's crazy. Imagine that. Like, imagine starting writing something when you were like much younger, and then like years later actually completing it. Like, what an accomplishment that must feel like. You know
I think
what I mean?
Also adds to the depth of it, because he's obviously spent so much more time like thinking through scenes and how that's going to look and where that's going. So that just think adding to the story, as you say, like the aesthetic of it, everything. I think there's just a whole other level of depth that it's going to bring, because he's been at it for so long and he's had like so many different ways to think about it or to look through it. So
I think the initial story started as the sort of part where he wins the holiday and goes, and I think he meets Lilu on the island or the planet that the kind of where you go on holiday in the film. I think he obviously started writing it, and like you said, he's expanded it and sort of widened it out over the years and sort of renamed characters. I think Corbin Dallas's character wasn't called Corbin Dallas originally. It was
it escapes
something
me
else.
what it was, but yeah,
different names. So it's obviously went through multiple rewrites, as you would expect from somebody who started writing at 16. But it just goes to show you that these people that have got a passion at a young age and are obviously really talented eventually can get themselves into a position if they work hard to create these. It kind of reminds me, not that it's the same kind of film, but Seth Rogen. He started writing Superbad when he was like 13 with his friend. And it went through obviously multiple rewrites as they got older as teenagers. The ages changed and obviously things that happened and it changed. Because when they were 13, they were writing it as 13-year-olds. And then by the time the film got made, it was like people that were kind of on the cusp of leaving high school rather than just starting high school. But like Luc Besson and Seth Rogen, they were talented, got into Hollywood, managed to make the things that they wanted to make. And it seems like it's an achievable goal, though probably quite hard. But you obviously need to put in the work. But yeah, it's turned out great. Like I love the way this film looks. That's the big plus for me. Like the way it looks is they got a lot of things spot on. They were kind of, it's like the futuristic New York is kind of halfway between what you would expect it to look like and what a comic book would look like.
Yeah,
it's not. They've not went super realistic, a la like a Blade Runner was trying to be. What would the world be in 100 or 150 years or 200 years? It was more like, how would we want it to look? So that's kind of cool. And I think the reason it ended up looking like that is because very early on in the production process, it got comic book writers and artists to join the production team, and they obviously had a lot to do with how it ended up looking visually. But yeah, how do you guys feel about the overall aesthetic of the film?
I love it. I think it's so well done. As you say, with the fashion side of it, I think they've done a really good job with that. Like you're saying, on the scenes like New York, that futuristic, this is what, everything's a bit dirty, everything's a bit run down, flying cars, all that. It's like, it is a future that you can envisage, but do we really want it? It's just that it's that look to the future. I think they've done a really good job of it. It kind of feels like it's possible. So yeah, I've always liked that aspect of it.
For me, this is probably one of my favourite looks of the future, if you know what I mean. Like from all the films, I also really like how older films make the future look, because they always make it look futuristic but also old at the same time. So it's like there's so many the computers and stuff in old future films just look outdated. I kind of love that look, and this one's the same. But this one in particular, I really like. I love how the houses look. I love how the beds change. I love how the outfits look, the cars, everything. It's probably I would say it is one of my favorite looks of the future. I just think it's so nice.
They do all the rusty edges on things, things are dirty and worn. But then there's all you're saying with the bed, when the bed comes out and it kind of does its own. Putting the sheets over,
it's not even that. It's like a new bed comes up from underneath, and it's like shrink wrap.
Yeah, shrink wrapped on the shower moves in and it's a fridge. Place, the fridge is there. Yeah. Even the cigarettes thing. He's got the cigarettes, and he's got so many, and the filter tip's massive, and the tobacco bit's really short, and it's just all these things about If they'd put vaping in there instead, you'd be like, all right, you've nailed that. But it's as close as it could have come.
They probably didn't.
That's not
realise that vaping was going to be a thing. But yeah, if they could go back, vaping,
that would have been what it effectively would have been. But
100%.
They've done such a good job in all these little things that they've just pulled in. And is it the guy, the sushi van coming up and doing
to the window,
to the window van and doing all that stuff. There's just so many bits that just are, I'd say, beautiful. I just love it. Just aesthetically, yeah.
I mean, the biggest gripe that I've got with these futuristic films is flying cars. I don't know what people writing, and obviously, there's a big gap here because Blade Runner is set in 2019 when we've lived through 2019, whereas this film's set in the 23rd century, so we're not there yet. So we could have flying cars by the time that date comes around. It's just, It seems a bit gimmicky, but I kind of understand why.
I don't mind
they're
that.
there. No, I don't mind it. I don't mind it. But like I said, it's more that style of it. Like the cars are kind of more comic book than real. I think in Blade Runner, the cars that were going forward meant they look like potentially what we would have. They looked like a DeLorean, a DeLorean for Back to the Future it flew instead of drove. It's like.
But the nice edge, like the taxi's just quite rounded,
it's
and
just
they can
curved
see
and
it's
stuff,
come
yeah.
from like a cartoon. Like you can see the sketch inside it.
Yeah, I
I
think they were going for like an unrealistic look of the future. Really, I don't think they were trying to make it super realistic or anything. But
having that as like having the environment they're in being a bit realistic, but all the stuff that's adorning it on top being a bit fake looking is kind of the way I think they've went for it.
I think as well what they've got right is it looks as if in the future they've just built up.
Yeah.
Because they've ran out of space, which people know that we're losing greenery by the second in Scotland. Never mind the rest of the world. The world's becoming more and more populated, so they need to build more and more houses. So I guess in the future there could be more people and then a lack of hope. So they're just building high rises. Like where Corbin Dallas lives is obviously like an apartment block, but obviously it's very futuristic in terms of what he's got. Like we spoke about, the bed, the fridge, the shower, the way it's it reminds me of these kind of single celled kind of Japanese apartment blocks where it's all highly convenient and everything has got a place and takes up minimal space, so they can get as many people into one block as they possibly can, instead of like a couple hundred. They could probably get 1,000. Yeah,
I think that's my favourite like genre of film, is this like futuristic, post-apocalyptic stuff. I love all that. This one's obviously not post-apocalyptic, but that set in the future fantasy where it's ideas of what might be that we can't really disprove. You can't be like, oh, that's never going to happen. Like these things are all options. But yeah, there's the way you say they've done that. Tried to make things more efficient, make it neater and tidier in the structural sense. Like I think they've done a really good job at it. It's good.
I think it's weird because this production was meant to be shot in France. Obviously, clearly the director is a Frenchman, but he couldn't. I think the story goes he couldn't find suitable facilities in France to shoot, so he moved the production to London, and they shot in Pinewood Studios for the most part. And then at the start of the film, we've got the kind of opening scene in the desert, and it's meant to be Egypt, but obviously, you can't really film in Egypt considering its historical importance. So they filmed in Mauritania for that part, so the desert. But what also baffles me is why is everything that he's doing, well, not everything, but why is it New York and not Paris? Why is everything deeply rooted in a futuristic New York or a futuristic LA? Or Tokyo? I'm guessing Japanese cinema or people will go there. But why are we not exploring what other cities might look like in times of the future?
To make it
don't
relatable
know.
to the
Possibly.
audience. Like
but it's just because he's went from Leon, which was set in New York, to Fifth Element set in New York. Obviously, it's futuristic, but
he obviously likes New York. Maybe it's like because the way of New York looks, I guess.
He got it right. I think the way that it looks in this, you can quite clearly see it's meant to be an over sort of exaggerated futuristic New York. You can tell that.
It's like
with the yellow taxis as well. Everything adds to it.
I think that would have been harder to do if he'd done it Paris. London, you
black
could
cabs.
maybe black cabs and red.
It's not as colourful though. That's the problem.
But
I think.
I think the New York's definitely the way I've went with that.
Yeah. I don't know. I mean, if you haven't seen the film, we haven't really touched upon what it's about. This film's weird in terms of narrative or story. Even me, I find it difficult to follow at parts. I think it's like it's one of these. It's like a generic sci-fi film where the world's in peril.
Yeah,
like most sci-fi movies, you have to stop something massive happening, and this has kind of got its own twist.
I kind of feel it's like weirdly simplistic and also weirdly complicated, both at the same time.
Yeah.
Which,
well, yeah. like another thing, one gripe I've got with the film: why is the opening credit sequence so fucking long? Goes on for about 5 minutes, and there's no need for that at all. And you're just kind of in space. What's that?
I don't even remember the opening credits. Wait, what was it?
Well, it's just like, I think the backdrop space, and it's just all the kind of names come up, and there's some music playing, and then after that you go into the sort of opening scene, which was in the desert, where I'm guessing that was set hundreds of years ago, 300 years ago, from where we end up.
And it's got, what's his name in it? Who's the Billy? Who's the actor? It's like actually quite a decent actor.
Luc Perry.
Luc Perry sitting there, like,
yeah,
just that's his role, just quite a small part.
Yeah,
for someone who was quite big at the time.
Yeah, it's quite a small part. He's only in it for, I don't know,
3 minutes or
a
whatever
couple
it is.
scenes or frames. But no, it's interesting because you obviously need to have that part of the story to understand the Fifth Element aspect of it. It's what I find really strange though is you've got this ancient Egypt kind of backdrop. That's what it's meant to be, and then these mad-looking alien robots turn up out of nowhere.
Because are you German?
It's like, but my thing is like they do it. They film in such a way where they never show them till the very last minute. It's like almost ominous, and you're not sure if they're bad or good.
Yeah.
Till you find out that they're actually good, and it's not. And then he puts his finger out, and the wee thing
key
comes out, and the
they're
key
almost
comes
comical.
Out. It is comical, yeah. But that's the whole. I suppose it adds to the
puts me
aesthetic.
Mind, what's the robot in the Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy? It's kind of that round,
right?
You know, it's kind of got that comical aspect to them, just the way they waddle along, like shifting about, just like so useless.
Very true.
Like,
it's I found that bizarre, and then like most sci-fi movies, you get a massive time jump.
Yeah.
It's like 300 years later. It's like fucking hell, Jesus Christ. So we're now. So you've not even explained really what's going on. You kind of get a sense of maybe what's going on, but yeah, it's a farcical kind of story concept, like a narrative mechanic where there's 4 stones and a 5th element, because the 4 stones resemble the 4 elements that we have.
Yeah.
And then there's the 5th element, who's like a fucking
the perfect human, the
super being.
Yeah, super being.
Yeah. Which obviously, when we get into the actual story, is Milla Jovovich.
How you say it? It's Jovovich.
That's how it's spelled.
I just don't say it.
I know. I used to say Djokovic, but I think I'm saying it wrong.
Djokovic is
he's a tennis guy. Yeah. Yeah, my wife laughs at me when I try and say her name because I can't say it.
Jovovich.
Yeah. So it's Jovovich.
Milla Jovovich, yeah.
Milla Jovovich.
Well, that's how I would say it. Sorry to anybody if we're mispronouncing names. Write us at the podcast, so give us a wee comment on Instagram or something, DM us and say, how you
DM
fools!
A little voice note of the correct pronunciation.
You fools, yes.
Yeah, like a voice message, that'd be good.
Yeah. That her character isn't real though. It's mad because she gets recreated in like a mad capsule.
That scene,
3D printer.
I absolutely love
like
that
a
scene.
3D printer.
Let's 3D print an actual human based on the DNA, and I just think as a scene when they've put that together, it's just again fascinating to watch. And they do like the slicing. You see the bits of the brain, like the X-rays or the CT scans or whatever it is, and they just like slice, put it all together. Like it's just so obscure, but again, just done so well. And I'm saying, depending what version you watch, whether it's like the theatrical or the other one, like she's naked in the cut,
like the real cut.
Yeah, the real cut. So you see like her full scantily clad, like just, and then they put the strips over her. The can't remember what they call them. Is it like thermal bonds or something like that? And the thermal bands, and they put them over to cover up.
Mm-hmm.
But it's just like, and again, that like we're talking about the costumes. You know, like that's thermal bands that she's wearing as an outfit, but
she's fantastic in this film.
Yes,
just even from when we're introduced to her, how that she reacts in that, like
she's in that pod and they take the photograph and she's just like writhing about,
How
screaming.
you have to be a certain kind of actor to pull that off.
They made up that, so she's doing the speech in the,
crazy.
Like the original,
the language
that they made up.
That language was made up by Luc Besson. I think there's like 400 words that he created as a fictional language, and to get her used to it, they would write to each other and speak in that tongue when they were around each other, just to get her more and more familiar. But what's more fascinating is she was chosen out of between 200 and 300 applicants that he met in person. This film could have been drastically different depending on who they cast. I don't know. I'm guessing that they probably would have had to have done some form of audition. But yeah, it's a big pool of people to choose from.
Yeah.
Like normally in projects, you might narrow it down to, I don't know, half a dozen, 10. But like to have 300 up to 300 people all vying for the same part, she would probably. I think people knew who she was at this point, but she probably wasn't a super famous person. She's obviously a famous supermodel, and she's kind of straddled the world of film as well. But I was looking at her kind of film credits. She had been in stuff, and I've seen Dazed and Confused, and I forgot that she was in that. I had to Google it and be like, "Oh, Milla Jovovich," and I was like, "Oh, she plays the mad hippie chick with the guitar in Dazed and Confused."
Could you see anyone else doing this role now, though? Like it's
Nah.
I think she's just
Absolutely not.
She just nails it. Absolutely nails it.
Absolutely not. Like I think that's why the casting's so good. It's like we have other casting what ifs that we'll bring up just in a moment, but no. Absolutely not. It's perfect for this role. This couldn't be remade with somebody else.
No.
I mean, this film probably a film like this or a reboot or an adaptation of this will probably never ever be remade. Just
Good. Don't touch it. Don't touch it.
fair. Well, shouldn't. Yeah, I think me and Adam were talking about it before we started recording about the potential lead, who it could have been, and I understand why it could have been said person, but I'm very, very glad.
I'm also very glad. The said person is, I'm not going to say one of my favourite actors, but I've got a soft spot for that actor on certain things. Like, he does certain things well, but no.
Well, you can see his name.
Mel Gibson. Can you
Oh,
imagine?
God.
Can you imagine that was Mel Gibson?
No.
I think Bruce Willis, again, they've nailed it on with Bruce Willis. He was great.
Mm-hmm.
Is this before or after Die Hard?
Wait, Die Hard came in 87.
Is that like, yeah,
88.
right, so
This is 90. This is 97.
yeah, so he's, aye.
I think 3 Die Hards had been
They
out at
done
this
all
point.
Yeah, 3 Die Hards have been at this point. By
But
this
he's-
point, this was just like a sci-fi phase, so he had like 12 monkeys and he went to like this.
Ah, right, okay.
So the thing about Bruce Willis is, and the fact that people might go, why would they consider Mel Gibson? But at this point in Hollywood, they were probably the two biggest action stars.
Actually, to be honest, I think Mel Gibson could have done it, but I'm happy they went with Bruce
Well,
Willis.
the fact that he's mental in real life, he probably could have done like a
So
mental
what's
role
that
in a
next?
film.
And when was Braveheart? Was
95.
95. So so he's in on the scene, but I think as a role, like it's an action hero role, and for me, I think off the back of all the Die Hard stuff, Bruce Willis fits it better.
I think so. Mel Gibson, it was between two people. Right? That's who Luc Besson wanted. Mel Gibson eventually dropped out of the project, leaving obviously a front runner. The thing about Mel Gibson, it was kind of a weird. It would have been a weird choice because he was coming off the back of success in terms of Braveheart won Academy Awards. He was nominated. It's like us as Scottish people might not particularly like it in terms of the historical facts about it and stuff like that. And the fact that there's an Aussie playing a Scot is a bit weird, and his accent is
questionable.
Leaves
horrific.
Leaves a lot to be desired. But I think this would have been a weird choice because on paper this looks like this could blow up very, very quickly and be a bomb. And I think that's what Bruce Willis was saying. He was really like trepidatious about taking the film on because he had a couple of flops before this.
Yeah.
He wasn't like in his pomp in terms of he's in an upward trajectory. And obviously he was concerned if he'd done a role like this in a film like this that is so out there that it could have potentially been another flop. Turns out it wasn't, and it was a really, really good decision of him to take it on. But I think he was doing this in The Sixth Sense would have came out around this time, so he was in a real weird kind of phase in his career at this point, Bruce Willis. But great cast. Like, I'm really glad that it was him and not Mel Gibson, though, in my opinion. I like some Mel Gibson, but yeah, I can only really see Bruce Willis in this part. Final casting What If is... It's not even a what if. It was casted but dropped out due to scheduling conflicts of touring. It was so. Rudy Rod should have been played by Prince.
Yeah.
Which I would have loved to have seen. I love Prince.
Ah, right.
I
okay.
think Prince would
And I
have
think
been.
when you see Ruby Rod, that's like a great character, and it is Prince. Like that's the.
Well, it is, because it's that kind of androgynous
Yeah.
kind of straddles the line.
Yep.
It's probably based a lot on somebody
Yeah, it's like
a
they've written
Prince.
it based on Prince. Managed to get Prince to go, oh yeah, I'll do that, and then being
then,
like, oh
yeah.
sugar, he's not going to do it.
What? That's not the strange part of this. The strange part of this is Jamie Foxx
Yeah.
was in line to play this character.
Whoa.
So it was,
hold
yeah.
on.
So after Prince couldn't do it, there was the two options: Tucker and Jamie Foxx, and that was it. So.
And also, the reason that Tucker got it is quite weird as well. It's because his body, he was smaller.
Yeah, it's smaller, more the physical. Like
yeah,
they
he
thought he
looked
would suit
kind
it
of
better
more
physically.
the part. Yeah, like physically,
He was much
it's kinda
better for
weird.
it. Much
yeah.
better for it, yeah.
I'm
Again,
guessing Russia was out at round about this time as well.
Yes. It would have been
It's
before
just-
this. I think.
Again, it's the casting. I just.
Oh,
I think
because Chris Tucker, obviously, he's the comedy in this. He's like the over-exaggerated comedy because he's a comedian as well. He's playing that role. But yeah, that obviously this film there is a lot of comedic elements in it, and I think that could possibly put some people off because it is a bit tongue-in-cheek and a bit camp at times, or quite a lot of times. And
Yeah, I would never say it was a comedy.
No.
But there's so many bits where you're just like, that's funny. That's done in that aspect is good. Yeah.
what else? Film score.
Very nice. I like it.
Yeah, it's one of these ones I think it's washed over me, the film score. It's not something that I really think about too much, so to me that means it's good. Like if it's not something that's jumped out, it doesn't jar at any point.
No.
It's just there and it works. I couldn't really tell you much about it. It's just it's good.
The best part for me was when Lilu is fighting all the aliens in that room and the blue woman's singing.
Oh yeah.
And so it's like completely opera, and then suddenly the music just starts kicking in, and I was boogieing, by the way. I was actually dancing about. It was actually such a banger.
I do like that
I thought
'cause,
it sounded so good.
yes, it's taken something classical and it's made it futuristic by adding that sound to it. And I don't think that's dated badly. I think that still sits.
That was sick. It was awesome. I thought I loved that part. I was like so that song. Like I would listen to that song. That was so cool.
So I like the score, I do, but I've got a bit of an issue with it because the film score was composed by Eric Serra, but he's a frequent collaborator with Luc Besson. So he's done Leon, he's done La Femme Nikita, he's done a lot of his projects. But when we done the Leon episode, I brought up the music in that because it sounds very like GoldenEye. But he scored GoldenEye, and the GoldenEye film scores in the game. It's this kind of new wave industrial stuff, but it's the overuse of it. He's got it's the same vibe in this film as well. So it's like
the same sounds.
Aye,
same
and that's it's fine when you hear it a couple of times. But then
Are
when
you
I
hearing
watch this,
GoldenEye again?
yeah, when I watch this film again, I'm like I can hear GoldenEye. I'm like, maybe you want to expand and make something a bit different. I really like the film score. It's just I feel like if you watched all of these films, they would all sound very similar.
Yeah, that's something I'd never picked up on.
No.
But as soon as you say it, I'm like, oh no, yeah, you're right. Yeah, that's definitely.
There's just certain bits that drop in. You're like, right, fair.
It's just obviously like an instrument sound that you've got on board with at
but
that
that's
point
it.
and then used it.
I'm not going to. I think the film score is great.
Did you say that it sounds like the film? Does it sound like GoldenEye, the film and the game, both of them?
Well, the game uses the film's music.
Right, okay, right. This brings you back to playing the N64. Just like, yeah, that's.
It does. I mean, I make no bones about it. The N64 is the best console that's ever been made.
That is not most people, probably a lot of people would agree with that.
Yep.
Well, they're right, and I like those people. And if you don't agree with it, fuck you.
It's PlayStation 2 or 360, but yeah. Okay.
I think that we've touched upon a lot of the different things. I like this the way this podcast has been. We've not sort of been bogged down in the plot. We've had a lot of other discussions.
I was
So
going to
it's
say, I
making-
think some people will be confused as to what the plot is because
well, that's
really
cool, but go out and watch it.
Yeah,
But that's just
Save the world. There you go. That's the plot.
that's kind of
yeah.
what it is. Yeah,
that's it. Nice. That's what I was saying earlier on. It's overly simple at certain points, but then it's overly complicated at bits. Simply, go save the world. That's it. You know.
I think what gets complicated about it is that they want to get all the right characters in the right place at the right time, and they do it in really weird ways. Like for a bit, like kind of Bruce Willis's character's gone for ages, and suddenly all characters turn up at once, and then they've all got to take the plane, and then they all turn up at once. Like even the priest guy has to end up sneaking into the plane, and he gets arrested. He gets taken to the place anyway, and so everyone ends up in the right place at the right time, but they do it. Not everyone's doing it together. They're doing it
differently. Yeah.
So it's super convoluted how they all end up in the same place, but they all do. I think that's what it is. It makes it really weird. 'Cause it makes it hard to follow at some points. Because I looked away for a second, looked back, and I'm like, wait, what's happened? At certain points, like how did he get there? But it's just, I think that's just how it worked, really.
Mm-hmm. I think I've referenced this in a few podcasts where the use of cross-cutting is very effective, and there's a scene in this where when Bruce Willis takes Milla Jovovich's character to the priest, and she's laughing hysterically because Zorg's got the case, but it's like it's empty, and they do that cut where it's like it's empty, and it's like the different scene they cut back. I like that. He's the baddie. I think he's the thing about it is like in terms of character and who you can see, he's the baddie, but the actual baddie of the film's just this kind of entity out in space that's going to
just evil.
Right, it's just
planet.
an evil black kind of
evil planet
load. Yeah, the end to this film's really over dramatic as well. I think they play it too much.
What's wrong with that?
It's just, I don't know. It's just the whole thing is like where she's kind of dying, but she's meant to be the fifth element, and then
why is she like
they
dying?
go back to
really
the Egypt, and then it's like the priest's like, oh, you have to tell her, Dallas. You need to say it to her. Oh, I love you, and it's like, and then eventually she shoots a fucking laser beam out her mouth and just blows this kind of the bad kind of whatever the entity is.
Because it's the film as a film, it kind of like touches on different bits, and it's like having a lead powerful female who is like having a female that is the fifth element. You know, it's nice, and that's a nice way to do it. But then it's like obviously we've got to come around to the man saving the woman at the end of the film.
No,
it's like, you know, oh, hero saves her because she can't do it herself, kind of thing.
No, I don't think it's set up like that. I don't think it's like that, but because there's a bit in the film where they're on the plane where she references to him and saying, "No, I'm here to save you because I'm the fifth element." And I'm like, well, actually, if he didn't help you, we'd all be fucked because he knows things. It's like the bit when they're kind of fighting the alien race, and he's got this inside information, but it's obviously from his military background, which was touched upon earlier in the film. But he's like, if you shoot the leader, then you win. And so he just goes round the corner, boom. So he's like, the way they play it is like, oh, how about I go and negotiate? And his way of negotiating is shooting the leader in the forehead.
Yeah.
And ending it all.
We're sending someone in to negotiate.
It's like, boom, that's the way to negotiate. It's weird. But the fact that he's a taxi driver, I don't know how convinced I could be that would be his line of work after leaving the military.
Yeah, I don't know. I think it's
with those that skill set.
But he's left the military, and they kind of allude to certain aspects of it. But it's like he's just wanting no life. He's wanting to just become a nobody who doesn't have to deal with anything serious and just get on with his life and find a partner. You know, find that one girl.
Well, was he married or had a relationship before? They kind of reference that, not too much, because like the guy that he works for is obviously somebody that he's known for a long period of time, and over their phone calls, it's like, are you still thinking about that dirtbag ex that left you? I'm guessing somebody else. But then, lo and behold, Milla Jovovich's character falls into his taxi at some point, and it's like, oh,
this fair landed on my lap.
Right, Look, we're not going to. We won't.
That's what I'm saying. There's just so many parts of the storyline that are just like so obvious and so like standard. Like it's
a very generic film set in a really a really aesthetically pleasing sort of world to look at.
Over the top world to look at, yeah.
But I think that's kind of us. I hope we're just going to move on to rating, I suppose.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I
that'll be us.
agree.
Who wants to go first? Oh, don't all.
Don't
fucking-
all jump in at once.
Yeah,
I'll
don't-
go first. I'll go
let-
first then.
let-
Yeah,
let
yeah.
Let Adam go first. He chose the movie. Let's see what he's got to say.
I say I do love the film. I do love the film. I've always enjoyed it. I would sit and watch it quite happily. But I appreciate like it's like nothing's perfect. I'm quite happily giving it a 4. Like for me, it's a solid 4. I enjoy it. I like so many aspects. I'm not a big like film geek. I don't look in depth at too many things. I just enjoy what I enjoy. This one, I would quite happily just watch. Like I enjoy it. So it's a good 4 for me, definitely.
I think that's fair. If you gave it 5, then I don't know if I would allow that. I would maybe have to cut.
See, I
that
don't know.
out.
Can you ever give anything a 5?
Well, well, you're going to see that
Yeah,
I
yeah.
have given something a 5.
I did toy with giving it a 4.5, like, but it's not the best film ever. So I'm just like,
Yeah.
nah, it's a good solid 4.
There's been 4.5s on the podcast.
Yeah.
4.5s. There's been 1 5. I mean, if you're listening to this podcast, the podcast has already been released. I gave The Godfather a 5. It's my bias. I really like the film, but also for what it done for cinema. It's got this. There's an aura about it. The fact that they made a fucking Paramount Plus TV show about the movie, it's got all these aspects. I found it really difficult not to give it a 5.
Yeah.
I can understand why people would go, "Oh, I really don't like that film," or I it's not for me, but I can take my bias out of it and kind of appreciate what it is. That's always nice.
Kenzie, you 4.5, Leon,
Yeah.
I did 4.5 Leon.
Yeah.
I really, really, really like Leon.
So what about this one then?
Yeah.
That's what I'm trying to think. I clearly do like Luc Besson films, and I really do like this film. Like, I genuinely really do. It's probably one of my favourite sci-fi films now. But I'd put it up there. I really like it. So I'm tallying between a 4 or a 4.5. I don't know if it just hits. It's definitely easily a 4, but I don't know if it should hit the 4.5 or not. I'm trying to think. Of Leon. I think I do prefer Leon easily. Leon's just so good, but I really like this. I'm going to give it
Drum roll, please.
Worst drum roll in a knee ever?
Yeah.
Fuck it, I'm giving it a 4.5.
Yes!
I'm giving it a 4.5. But as a 4.5, I would still say Leon is a better film.
So it's like a 4.4 and Leon's a 4.6.
Well,
Let's stop.
That's not getting
stop
really
overly complicating this now. Don't I come on a podcast and start this? That's no. We're trying to.
Yeah.
Fuck.
I'll take that.
do.
I'm happy with that.
The fact
I
that he's
do.
given it more than you is quite funny.
Yeah, I love that. Absolutely love it.
Yeah, fair. Right, fair.
I do really like this film. I do.
Okay.
It's like I said, it's probably a sci-fi film. If I'm thinking of a sci-fi film to watch, this one's gonna jump up. I really like a lot of things about it. There's some things I don't like about it, but there's not very many. So yeah, I know I like this one. I like a lot of things about this one. Yeah, so I'm gonna give it that. And
Cool.
Yeah.
That's Kenzie. A 4.5. Adam's a 4. It's left to me. I enjoyed this film. I've seen it before. Like I said, cast's really strong. As much as I do like this, the sort of. I like the music. And the aesthetic. The biggest plus points of this film are cast, the way it looks, the way it sounds. There's some sort of story elements, sort of narrative things that aren't as strong. I won't sort of go into detail too much. But if you like, I would say if you like 90s sci-fi, this is 100% a film for you. And that's in that sense. I'm probably not as strong as these two. I'm going to give it a 3.5 for me. I think it deserves a 3.5. I wouldn't go as low as a 3. I think it deserves that extra half, but it's not quite a 4 for me. It's not quite got enough for me as in terms of what I'm looking at.
Do you not feel it's just a very easy, enjoyable watch?
100%.
Yeah, it's like you can just sit down, put it on, and watch it. You don't have to think too hard because the storyline's not overly complicated.
Yeah,
but there's enough going on,
100%.
especially in the visuals, that it's enjoyable to sit there and watch.
I think if I was to pick, like I said, that I prefer other sci-fi. So if I like 90s sci-fi that's been done on this podcast already, 12 Monkeys or this, I would watch 12 Monkeys over this. But I know that there's a lot of people that would pick this over 12 Monkeys. But then I probably prefer older sci-fi, so I would have Blade Runner over this 100%. It's like everybody will have their own niche of sci-fi that they like to watch. And for me, this is really enjoyable, but in terms of the overall sort of sci-fi genre, I could probably pick more films I would much rather go to and watch.
Because I like the Blade Runner thing, but I feel Blade Runner is more of a thinker.
Oh, 100%.
You can't just sit down with Blade Runner.
I like to think.
Yeah, totally. Yeah, but sometimes I like to just sit and have a movie on and not have to
munch loads of popcorn.
Yeah, exactly.
Sweeties and stuff. That's fair.
Yeah.
That's fair. I think we've given it fair scores across the board. And like I said, the sort of the best thing I can say, if you're a fan of 90s sci-fi and you haven't seen this, why not go out and watch it? Definitely a big sort of plus for us here is go and watch it. Like we all like it. So yeah. So we're now just going to move on to the rules of Cult Film Cafe, where we break down the film further using 6 rules or metrics, depending how you want to look at them. And those are low budget stroke box office flop, rewatchability, quotability, not well received by contemporary critics stroke reviewers, explores controversial topics, subjects and themes, and cultural impact and legacy of the film. So yeah, we'll just jump straight into the first one, which is low budget stroke box office flop, and this film was neither.
Yeah, we touched on this earlier.
Budget of 90 million and a box office of 263.9 million, which also made it the highest grossing French film at the international box office until The Untouchables in
2011.
Yeah.
2011. Yes. So yeah, it made a lot. Yeah, big bada boom.
Yep, big bada boom. Cost a lot of money though.
Yeah.
I think that was probably like we've touched upon it. The biggest reason why this film wasn't made earlier. It's just the amount of money that was involved in it.
Yeah.
So yeah, like Kenji said, the film had a budget of around 90 million.
Huge.
It's a big budget. If you're looking at in today's money, it's about just over 200. It's just over 166 million. Which, in comparison, Top Gun Maverick had $170 million budget. So yeah, it just goes to show you the sort of league of films that would be competing against if it came out today. I'm not saying it would do 1.5 billion at the box office that Top Gun done.
No,
but would it recuperate its money now? Potentially. I think it has enough of individuality that it probably would still make a decent return.
Yeah.
But yeah.
Is there anything else we really to say about this one?
I'll just touch upon a couple of things. So that in the US, they're the easiest sort of figures to get a hold of. So the film opened in 2,500 cinemas and it was our number 1 film for the first 2 weeks and remained inside the top 10 for a further 4 weeks. The film ran in cinemas for a total of 21 weeks. It's quite a long run, making just over 63.5 million in the US alone. So yeah, and like I said, about the budget in today's money, it would just be just over 166 million, and if it was to gross the same amount of money, it would be just shy of 487 million, so just shy of the 500 million mark, which would make it a profitable film. So yeah, not really much more to say other than it isn't low budget and it wasn't a flop, so that's a no for that one here. Rewatchability. Now that's one where how rewatchable a film is, and I think that's an individual. It's really an individual sort of opinion here, but we sort of try and follow that. We think that prime rewatchability is 90 minutes, around about that mark, because you're not investing your 2.5 hours, 3 hours into a movie, and they're much easier to sort of flick on and watch. Whether you can kind of phase in and out of these films a lot easier. But this film is just over 2 hours, which is obviously a little bit longer. But I do think that there's enough quirk in the film to make it rewatchable.
Yeah, I find it highly... personally, I find it highly rewatchable. I could sit and have it on regularly. Like Jamie had said about you, like watching...
Big Trouble.
Like a couple of times a year, like without any hassle. Yeah, it's like a kind of go-to film for me to just put on because...
So see if you're like in the house and you've got a couple of hours to kill, and you've got nothing else to do.
And there's not a Netflix series that I'm trying to batter
You
through.
maybe go,
I'll
"Do you know
just
what I
I'll
was-"
put that on. It's
Aye,
like
fair.
there's a couple of films that I would, and that's one of them. Yeah.
What other ones is there?
I don't necessarily want to say because I don't want to see if we maybe do them another time.
All right, fair, right? Fair.
But yeah, there's like
you
a couple of
do- if
films
you
that
don't
you
want
just,
to say it, right,
most of them
fair
are probably Disney because like I've got kids. But yeah, just put it on like
Fair.
an old Disney
Fair.
film. But yeah, this is probably one of my favourite go-tos that I would just fire on.
I mean, also I've said like people that are, like I said, fans of 90s sci-fi. I think this is easily a film that they'll watch on repeat.
Yeah.
As well. I think it has got a rewatchable quality to it. What do you think about that, Kenzie?
Yeah, if you can turn a film on like halfway through and still be able to continue watching it, like even like after of course you need to watch it once, but like if you can, once you've had that first watch, if you just see it on at some point and you can just jump into it like halfway through, I think that's a rewatchable film. But that doesn't mean not all films, because not every film you can do that with, but this one you can. But you can still get rewatchable films but you'd have to start from the start. But this one's not one of those. I feel like it's an easy one to watch. It doesn't matter where you are in the film. If you're starting it, if you're a little bit halfway through, even if you're near the end, it's just like, oh yeah, I'll just watch the rest of this.
Yeah,
It's
easy to jump in.
Easy to jump in, exactly.
So that's it for rewatchability. We all deem it a rewatchable film. So we'll move on to quotability. This one isn't overtly obvious in terms of quotes that'll just... There's been some podcasts where people have instantaneously said something
Fight
as soon
Club.
as we've got to this point. Yeah. One of my favourite things in this is the scene where the police come and it's like, "Are you human?" And Bruce Willis says, "No, I'm a meat popsicle."
I think this is a door. There's no name and no number.
Let's see it.
Sir, are you classified as human?
Negative. I am a meat popsicle.
Meat popsicle,
I'm like, I fucking love that. It's like so, and it's not even that. It's if you watch the scene further, there's the guy in the other apartment, and it's like he goes to the door and he starts being aggro, and Bruce Willis cuts back to Bruce Willis and goes, "That's the wrong answer."
Yeah,
it's like you always need to know the game and how to play it.
yeah.
Because he, at that point, he's harbouring a lot of people in his apartment at the same time.
And
if you're familiar with that
does he
part
not
of the
like
film.
put his pass on the other guy's door or something?
Yeah.
So they like, so they
It's like his name's like
Yeah,
so
he's
he
put his
puts
business
attached it to
card.
the peephole.
yeah.
Yeah, it's cool.
I've got him
there's a lot
here.
of
Yeah,
stuff.
I think because on the quotability thing for me, it's to me the film is not one of the ones where I think it's got all these lines that are just, you know, like we've said with Star Wars or Fight Club or things. There's just lines that people just use, and I don't think it's there. But I think there's some really good lines in it that, say, if you are a fan of the film, you pick up on. There's stuff like the big bada boom, big bada boom, like that's kind of quotable. That's something you'd maybe recognise. Or like, I'm Corbin Dallas. The amount of times that you hear like characters saying, and it's the joke about everyone saying that they're Corbin Dallas.
Well, because everybody is trying to be him in the film, because I don't know why. I don't understand why they're all trying to be him.
Well, it's because Corbin Dallas has won the ticket, and that's
so
like all
they're trying
pretend to
to
be
get
him. They're
there,
trying
right,
to do
fair.
that because there's been a mess up about everyone trying to get on the flight to go be.
It's also the bit there, obviously, with the multipass.
And her
Multipass.
like her saying multipass.
Yeah.
Again, that to me is quite quotable, but it's not like a big.
It's not
prolific-
something that you're probably going to reference in
Yeah,
day-to-day
you're not saying that
because,
in day-to-day
like,
life.
Who's got a multipass? Like,
No, exactly.
Do
Like,
they exist? Don't know.
yeah.
If they ever do, that's what I'm going to be saying.
Yeah,
all the time.
exactly. You'll be going up, going
Multipass.
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 That's
If it
maybe
ever becomes a thing, it's
so ahead of its time. Yeah. But so for that aspect, but yeah, there's lines like you say, like the meat popsicle one, or there's certain bits that they kind of touch on that it's well written, but I don't think it's like iconically in the public eye. These lines are going to be used, and constantly people are like, "Oh yeah, that's a quote from Fifth Element." You know, it's not.
It's not. It's just like it's when she's. I don't know what's happened to her. Like, because in the film, there's a bit where the chase scene.
Yeah.
I know we didn't touch upon that either. I just want to reference it in terms of dialogue. But what happens to her character that she just passes out? I don't know, because then she's like limp, takes it to the priest. But it's a bit where there's a couple of bits in that scene is she's not conscious. He goes to kiss her.
Yeah.
And he's like, shouldn't have done that.
Yeah.
Shouldn't have done that. And it's like she pulls his gun out. I like that. But then it's like try to talk about names. It's like me, Corbin, you. and then she says her name, and he's like, it's like shorter. It's like
shorter
trying
version.
to mimic it. It's like, and then eventually we get to Lilu. It's like not highly quotable. I really like that scene though. I really
Yeah, I think
do
that's
like
it.
that
They
scene.
kind of because when he leaves there, he basically asks the priest like, what does such and such mean? He's like, never without my permission. Like,
Aye,
there's-
'cause
I thought so.
Yeah, because he knows the language.
yeah,
It's quite funny because at that point he comes running out in this big fucking uniform robe with all the kind of element symbols on it. Yeah, and she obviously spots that. It's like a reference point for Milla Jovovich's character. But no, I think it's not got potential big one-offs like a lot of other films that people will reference. But I think the problem with the quotability one is the films that people will reference. I think there's a real sort of small number of those. It's like because people regurgitate the same ones over and over again. It's like it's trying to find films where you could maybe see a bit of the dialogue being potentially used. And I think this does have it. And I think the more you watch this, and the more if you were in a circle of people that
amongst that fan base, like amongst the fan base, multipass. That's funny, and people know what you're on about.
Yeah.
But again, if
you're not just going to say it in a pub one night.
Exactly.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Fair. So yeah, it's a bit of a weird one.
Even the
kinda-
Ruby Rad,
he's mental, like Chris Tucker in this.
It's more about the style and the way they say things as well, as opposed to what they actually say.
Yeah, I agree. Like it has got some good bits in it. Like I think I would say this is we'll half it. We'll give it a half mark here.
I think that's fair.
Not well received by contemporary critics, stroke reviewers. So currently the film has a 7.6 out of 10 on IMDb, based on like 470,000 ratings. It's a bit of a weird metric because fans, people, anybody with an IMDb account can go and rate. So we try and look at Rotten Tomatoes. That's probably the best one because you've got a mix of what the audience think of the film and a mix of what film critics and film reviewers think of the movie. Now, the film has a 71% on the Rotten Tomatoes tomato meter, which is its critics rating, and it's got an 86% audience score. So this is obviously a film where the audience like it more than the critics do, but it's not well reviewed. It obviously does have positive reviews to have it's not a certified fresh film, but it's still a positive in terms of how the critics feel about it.
That feels like quite a fair balance. And is it also you're always going to have, or generally would you have, the audience review being higher than the critics because the people that like the film are more likely to review it? So that's generally going to be slightly inflated.
I think the films that are like high 90s, it's very weird to see a film that's like high 90s in both categories.
Yeah.
Because films that critics rave about, the audience probably aren't necessarily seeing everything that the critics see in the film, or they aren't looking at it in that critical eye, so they might be slightly harsher. Whereas the flip side to that is something that critics might kind of like, but not super inflate in terms of 5-star movie. Yeah. Audience probably like it a bit better because it's got more of that balance in terms of what cinema goers are looking for. And then obviously you get the outliers where you do get films that are really high on both, or you get films that are absolutely slammed by both. And you can get a vice versa where you get a really, really dreadful film in terms of what the critics say, but the audience love it. And it can go swing the other way. I've seen films where critics think it's amazing and the audience think it's absolutely terrible. It's just it's really subjective when you look at films. It's how you feel about it personally. We've already given our thoughts and opinions on the film already. The listeners already know what we all think of it, so they can kind of get a sense of what we think. But it's just nice to touch on what other people will say. I always look for sort of top critics, specifically critics that would have been reviewing films at that time period as well, instead of film reviewers that are retroactively reviewing it, because then there's a different slant that you can put on it. So like I would look there. So Gene Siskel writes, well, he wrote for the Chicago Tribune, but he's been reviewing films for years up until this point. He gave it 3 out of 4. Some of these top reviewers give it out of 4 stars, which I've never ever really understood. But yeah, like people like that, they're the kind of best ones to look at. But yeah, you get a mix of different reviewers. But like I said, it's relatively well reviewed across the board. But like most films like this, I think it's one of those films where it's very split in the camp. People who like it really like it, and people who don't like it really, really dislike it.
Yeah, it's kind of split in certain ways as well. It's just, but mostly positive anyway. For the most part, it's interesting.
It's interesting because just looking at some of the reviews, you get a lot of sort of lower ones. You know, you get ones people giving it 2, people giving it 1.5, 1.
I can understand why people, like, as you say, you're trying to be. It is subjective, and I can just totally appreciate that. For some people, this is just going to like tick all the wrong boxes for them, and they'll just be like, "This is horrific." I can see that side of it.
Yeah,
you know, but I love it.
Yeah, for the most part, people agree and they think it is a good film.
A lot of things, it says Chris Tucker's performance divided a lot of critics, so I'm guessing a lot of critics did not like that, and I can kind of see that. But I think that's dependent on if you like Chris Tucker or not. He can be a lot to handle, if you know what I mean.
I think that's the character as well, that the Ruby Rod character I can see splitting a lot of people like that.
But
especially
I think that's
time.
Chris Tucker in general. Every character that Chris Tucker plays is also very... But yeah, that character especially is very up in your face, very, very loud. But it's the character as well. I think he was right for it. I don't know what else.
He's got it down to a T. He does the character so well.
I would still have liked to have seen Prince's.
Yes,
Prince's would have been better, and it wouldn't have been as much as Chris Tucker's was.
I don't know. Like, I think
it would still be much, I'd guess, but not nowhere near as like.
I think it would have been over the top in a different way.
It would have been more natural, though. That's the thing for Prince. That would have been that is Prince.
Yeah, he would
so
have
it's
been
like someone playing
himself.
He's Prince playing himself, or someone trying to play Prince. So I think Chris Tucker doing that role and like try to channel Prince as inner Prince, like kind of makes it better.
Yeah,
because it is more of a caricature. Where if Prince was just doing it, then would it have been quite as hitting? I don't know. I'm glad it wasn't Prince, but I can totally see Prince doing it. And I think that's, for me, it's that you're trying, like, it's like, right, okay, you're doing this role of Ruby Rod, channel your inner Prince, and that's who you're thinking of when you're doing the role. That works for me.
Like that's probably what he's in to sort of getting into the mindset. They would have went, I get where you're coming from, and I understand what Kenji's saying, that he is a polarising character. If you don't like him, it could maybe sway your opinions of the movie, or if you really buy in, then it could sway it the other way. Just want to bring up a couple of other sort of reviews. Roger Ebert, probably the most famed film critic of them all, gave the film 3 out of 4, which is a really, really positive review. And I'm a big Empire fan. I have stacks of them that I used to buy when I was younger. And Adam Smith's review for The Empire was 4 out of 5. So the film critics that I love gave it positive reviews. So it's only sort of right that I would give it a positive review. I think that's how people normally work. Sometimes we don't agree, but for the most of the times, I do agree with these people in terms of what they give it. But yeah, no, I think it's as a subjective film, I do think it is one of those that is very easily divided in terms of, if you really love this genre and this style, you're going to absolutely love this film. And if you don't, I can see why you would give it like 1 or 2 and be in the camp of, no, I'll probably never revisit this film ever again. So yeah, but no, I would say that this one isn't a tick. I think it was well received enough to not be not well received. Nice wee double negative there. So we'll now just move on to explores controversial topics, subjects and themes. Don't necessarily think there was anything within the film that was controversial at all.
The only thing that flags up for me in this bit is like the gender kind of thing, that like with the character Ruby Rod, you know, like the masculine, feminine, androgynous thing. I think it's kind of ahead of its time on that aspect, and the fashion. There's a whole bunch of characters where, like, they're dressing, whether you would describe it as like drag or just what. That's the only thing that I think really factors in here at all.
Yeah,
but it's not it doesn't feel massively controversial or in your face. It's just a stylistic thing that I think is probably more poignant now in society than it was back then. I don't know how it was.
I'm not too sure about
It's
that.
quite weird because it's quite. It's funny.
So I feel like that style's been about for even like that back, like that's the type of style you could see earlier and stuff like that. It's for certain people, I guess, but
yeah, it depends on where you're from or what kind of circles.
It's very
you're
European.
In. Yeah, maybe that's more European.
I get where you're coming from though. The whole androgyny thing. I suppose that at the time when we're talking about androgyny, the way that it started, you know, people like Lou Reed, David Bowie, Prince, they were sort of flag bearers to, I suppose, what is not for me, it's not contentious, but what could be deemed as a contentious movement now in the world in terms of the way that people feel about themselves and how they want to be perceived.
It seems to be a bit of a forerunner for that,
yeah,
and it's kind of nice that it's there.
No, it's good to have these characters in film. I can see why people might see it as a bit of a controversial one, but no, I think it really goes in with the film. Like it fits naturally. I think what tends to happen now is they shoehorn these kind of characters in, and they get it massively wrong.
Yeah, and I think so. This one, seems to be a very organic. It seems to work. I'm just curious as to, like, do some people see that as it's like how that is perceived by some people or some quarters of society? I don't know. But again, I don't think the film's overly topical. Like, I don't think it's got anything that would really offend anyone.
I mean, people that are highly religious might not be into what goes on in terms of the ancient, how the world, like all of that stuff. But it's not. Even doing research for the podcast, couldn't really find anything from that. Normally, if it has been contentious in terms of religion, it gets flagged up very quickly when you do a Google search. I wouldn't necessarily say that like the film's overly controversial. Luc Besson's a very controversial person, though. We've touched upon it in the Leon episode. I'm not going to drag up old news. But he has, at least he used to have an eye for a younger woman. Yeah. Have you finished the Leon podcast
No,
yet? So have you heard what we had to say on that part yet?
There was bits. I think I'm halfway through that.
You know what I mean. But this is really funny because when this film production started, he was with his ex-wife partner, who's in the film. She plays the diva that sings, you know, the blue alien.
Oh, yeah.
That was his wife. He left her during this production to partner up with Milla Jovovich. So they married. It only lasted a couple of years, and then that marriage broke down. But I think Milla Jovovich, when she was in this film, was in her early 20s.
Yeah. Is it
and he was about 40. What's that?
But in the Leonardo DiCaprio just got like a
Well, I think that's overinflated. I think that's been a running joke in Hollywood for so long, but it's starting to feel true because Leonardo DiCaprio's just split up with his girlfriend just as she turned 25. Yeah. It's just a bit of a running joke that he doesn't date anybody over the age of 25, Leonardo DiCaprio.
Sorry, your birthday next week. Okay, cool. Good to know. Moving on.
I'm a Leonardo DiCaprio fan. I don't want to slander him. He's a fantastic actor. But hey, at least, like, fair enough if you've got an age range and if they're happy with it, as long as you're not doing anything wrong and you're not being. To be honest with you, nobody's came out and said that he's done anything bad or that. Do you know what I mean? It's just
a bit shallow.
A bit shallow, yeah. I mean,
you're too old for me now.
He's also the biggest movie star on the planet, though. So, is he allowed to be shallow? More probably. So I think, like, in terms of what the film explores, not necessarily controversial, but I suppose if you deep dive into these films, you can start to see sort of change in terms of during the production, how things are could be a bit contentious among it, controversial. Luc Besson's a very polarising character. We touched upon it in the Leon episode. If you're a fan of the podcast and you've listened, if not, we're not going to deep dive into it here, but me and Kenzie spoke at length about it in terms of what's been going on surrounding him, in terms of legal cases, etc., that have been levied against him. They are ongoing, and somebody's now appealing again as of this year. One of the females that were involved is actually now investigating into the magistrate that was involved. There's a lot of corruption at play. That looks like it's quite a contentious sort of subject. It's kind of like a Roman Polanski kind of thing, where I feel like he's maybe being protected when he shouldn't be.
Yeah.
Because we all know Roman Polanski, what he done, but he's never ever been exiled back to America to be tried properly, and he's still making films and living a life, and we shouldn't really be on the streets. But hey, we're not here. Let's not get bogged down in that. I think we'll just swiftly move on to the last point, which is the cultural impact and the legacy of the film.
So that's maybe the thing more that I'm seeing. It's more the cultural impact that I'm like saying about that style thing, as opposed to the controversy.
That's why they're both back to back, because I think sometimes when people talk about things, they can.
Yeah, I don't think it's controversial, but I say is it a bit of a forerunner in that style thing? And you say the androgyny, like the characters.
Well, another one that's doing it, Harry Styles is really on that. Yeah. Harry Styles is doing his best David Bowie currently.
Yeah. That's so maybe that's what I've kind of got it in the wrong category there. But you feel, because like that whole flamboyant Ruby Rod character, there's also a character is he kind of deaf that Ruby points out when they're at the concert, and it's like a really big burly guy.
Yeah, like, but he's like it's like he was a riff on a composer, like an old school.
Yeah, he's kind of got that very.
Yeah,
it's almost like baby clothes on, like just really looks obscure with the style thing. But again, it's like, is that kind of I don't know.
But it was massively appreciated by fans.
Yeah,
where are all my fans? That's what I'd like to know.
No, you're probably hiding like in front of mine. Like I don't know where mine are either. So
no, Kenzie, you got anything in terms of the legacy or the cultural impact of the film? I think like there's not. I would have expected more films to be like this in terms of style and the way it looks, but it's maybe one of those very niche kind of authorship films where the director has to have a vision and then get the people in place to sort of help him build it out. And if you haven't got one of those ideas, like it's probably one of these films that wouldn't have been made. See, it's not the type of film that would have just been written and handed off to a team to go and make. So you get scripts like that where people are just script writers. They write loads of scripts. Some will get bought and then they'll be passed to a production company who then will cast. Who then will put a director in place to come in and make it.
Well, like we said, it's a labour. It seems to be a labour of love for him that it's taken him so long to do. So 100%. Is it realistically just a one-off? Like it is just purely what he's done and created, and that's it.
It's quite funny how though, as somebody who was writing the story from 16, how he didn't have sequels planned or anything like that. But maybe he wasn't like a novelist. He was more like he wanted to be a screenwriter. So maybe it's much easier just to do one and dones rather than like if you were a novelist, like a J.R.R. Tolkien or a George R.R. Martin. They're looking at where can my book go and can I get more and more J.K. Rowling. They're looking at down the line. Whereas when you're writing potential ideas for screen, maybe it is just an idea and it's a one-off.
For legacy, really, from what I can see, it's seen as a cult classic. It's been put on a few different lists about best sci-fi films of all time. I think it placed number 42 out of 100 for best sci-fi movies was Time Out. It was put in some list about the visual effects, but it tied at 50, and it was top 50, and it was tied 50 with like 2 other films,
that's bizarre, really
weird. Some people have referred to the film as the best and worst summer blockbuster of all time. I don't really fully understand that, and in some circles the film has gained a so bad it's good.
Seems to be the moniker with a lot of these cult classics that a lot of people are saying so bad it's good. I can understand the best and worst, because if you look at awards that this film's been nominated for, there's a lot of the kind of ones that are positive, but it was also nominated for Razzies, like Golden Raspberry Awards and stuff. So I get why people would say the best and worst, because there's good aspects and bad aspects of the same film that were probably nominated.
And I'm not offended by that at all. I can totally appreciate that. It would get put forward for those kind of awards. I can understand why people don't like it. I can get that, but I like it.
Yeah,
the film also got sued.
Yes,
which was interesting about
Jovovich.
The guy who, it said looked like his comic book or something. Series or something.
Okay.
But the problem is one of the creators of the comic book got hired as part of the production team.
Yep. And only very little was used, so it was dismissed in 2004.
Was that a thing about the taxis and
2004.
stuff? Was it,
There was apparently some apparently they were saying that they were copying them, but they weren't. They were kind of maybe just using it. But the biggest problem with that is one of the people that were trying to sue was part of the production team, so he'd hired them specifically because he was obviously familiar with the comic. But Jodorowsky wasn't hired, but he's a South American filmmaker. We've spoke about him on the podcast. I think, I'm not quite sure, but we will do soon, because I think June is on the list, and he'll be an interesting name to bring up for that because he was attached to make June originally. But yeah, there's a film, a documentary film about the reason why that was a disaster and didn't actually see the light of day. But like I said, I've got a lot to say in the matter at the time, but he was one of the people that was suing Luc Besson, but like Ken said, did get dismissed. In terms of cultural impact, I think it probably does have a bit in it. I think the problem is because it's a late 90s film, like we've said before, is tonal shifts happen very quickly, so it can look outdated very quickly and maybe a bit elaborate and over the top. I think when you look at it now in 2022, I think there's a lot of emphasis on realism in films, and they want to make characters real and make the world look real, whereas that's kind of on the opposite end of the spectrum.
Yeah.
But there should still be a market for it, and I wish that there was more sort of successful films like that in the forefront that were taking risk. You know, this was a big risk. $90 million budget, could have went absolutely tits up easily, but was successful, had a market, and people still love it. So I would say it does have a legacy. It's just maybe not as strong as some of the other films we've had in the podcast, but yeah, that you can definitely see how it has impacted. So yeah, well, that is it for the rules. We will now swiftly move on to the third act of the podcast, where we decide whether, based on our previous discussion, if it is a cult film or not, and if it is, where you would place it in your top 100. That is the gist of this section. Let Kenzie go first.
Yeah, I thought about this a few times, quite a bit, and I think I'm fairly happy. I got to my result for this one quite easily. I think this is a cult film, and I think it could be even seen as almost as a cult classic in a way, for sci-fi anyway. Yeah, I just thought it's funny. I almost seen it as not being as kind of culty as I'm pretty sure yeah, I did. I almost thought Leon seemed more culty to me, but I feel like Leon's talked about like way more than this film. I've heard so much more about Leon than I'd have The Fifth Element, although I knew of The Fifth Element from a young age. Now, I literally hear nothing about it. In fact, I hadn't heard anything about it until I saw it on the list of this podcast. That's how very little I've heard about it since then. So yeah, it's one of those ones, kind of like 12 Monkeys, I feel like. Not 12 Monkeys more, that's kind of died down a bit. You just don't hear much about it, but that even makes it more of a cult film because of that. Because it's obviously still got a following. It's just, it's not huge, like what, big, but not like super like huge. So yeah, I would give this. I would definitely say this one is cult film.
So where would you place it in your list if it would make it?
Well, Leon got into my top 10. This will certainly not. I still think Leon is a far better film and a much more one you should go out and see. But I still think this one's a must watch as well. I would probably put it. I was going to give it 32, but I think I've put something in 32, and I'm not too sure if that's true. I'm going to put it 33 at the moment. It's in the 30s anyway, low 30s. That's what I'd say.
Fair, there you have it. Kenzie thinks it's a cult film, and like always places it in a definitive number, but he never keeps track of where he puts these films. So they might be
I will check.
They might be double booked in some of these slots and have to be adjusted at a later date. But Adam, what about you?
Yeah, so I'm kind of on the fence with whether it's cult, because again, I think it's like what we define as cult, and we've had this chat off podcast as well. I think Kenzie said there about it not being something that you hear about, so does that make it more cult? And I kind of like, oh no, that maybe does, because it's not a film that I feel people talk about. So if that kind of makes it more cult, then yes, it is. But I don't think it's got like a big following like other films we've talked about, you know, like fanatical following. So that makes it less cult. I find this definition of cult difficult to kind of get my head around at times.
I think the problem with that is when you just go and Google cult or cult following, it's like it's such a generic answer that you get, because to have a cult following, does it need to be something that's big?
But even when we looked at like ticking those boxes, it didn't necessarily tick all the boxes for cult. So
yeah,
if we use the rules,
it's quite hard though.
Yeah,
it's why they're not hard and fast rules. It's why people sort of need to take it up and sort of like these are just more sort of discussion
talking
points, rather than that. But you know, if it does tick the boxes, then it is more along the lines of.
I wouldn't get into an argument about it being a cult film, because I don't think it would have enough to sort of push it over the line. But
it's not as glaringly obvious as some other films.
Exactly. If I'm putting it on my list, like it's a film that I really enjoy. It's easily top 25 for me. Easily, it could probably potentially break top 15. But again, it's like having. I think you've got to put it in context with all the other stuff.
Yep.
Like so it's easily top quarter, but it could probably push up a little bit just depending on what else was in there for me personally.
That's fair, and like I know I like that you touched upon the whole cult thing, because people will be like, well, based on the word cult or cult following stuff, like Harry Potter should be on these lists, and that should not be the case. At least I don't think so. Anyway, it's not a franchise that, although people call it a cult following, I would just say it has a big following, not a cult following. So I think the use of the word cult in these sort of scenarios is overused.
Yeah,
without people actually knowing what it is. Like
it's just one of those words that's now been kind of washed into something that's now transformed into something else.
What was a cult 100 years ago? It was like an offshoot faction of people that were so one-way traffic in terms of their thought process that they all believed everything that they said, or they were all brainwashed to follow a certain set of rules.
Yeah.
Whereas now the word cult's kind of opened up to mean, if something's culty, it's got 100 million fans worldwide. And I'm like, well, that's not really true, because these cults back in the day would never have 100 million members, because then, one, they wouldn't be cult, and two, you would know about them pretty quickly. The reason these cult factions managed to sort of
because they're under the radar and
duck dodge and dive their way through history is because they're under the radar. They're kind of underground, and it's not until, like most cult films, it's not until years later where people are getting wind of it. Normally with cult films, it takes a few years for them to kind of develop this secondary appreciation, and then they end up with these kind of cult
underground fan base.
Yeah.
It kind of comes
that's
to the forefront
kind of
later.
where I would say that the film industry kind of follows more that avenue rather than just cult. It's quite easy to say the word cult these days without kind of understand or having your own definition. And I think, like everything, it's your own opinion. And when creating the podcast, I've done a lot of intensive research and tried to work out a scenario that was plausible and made sense. And I think it does for the most part for people listening.
So does this one fall into the cult thing for you then, or?
I think so. I think this is a film that, like Kenji said, it's kind of done it backwards. So you'll have films where it goes the opposite. They have their low budget or their box office flops, but then they get a big following in the DVD market secondary when people are buying them, seeing them on home cinema. Whereas this probably had a big influx of people seeing it at the time because it made a lot of money, But over the years, it's like the fan base has kind of got smaller and smaller and smaller and smaller. When you're looking at it for 2022, it's kind of done it the opposite way.
It's now become a cult film.
I would say so, yeah, because I think at the time it was probably advertised everywhere. It was probably in cinemas for 3 months.
Yeah.
Like I said, in America, it was in the cinema for 21 weeks. That's nearly half a year that this film ran in the cinema. That's a long time.
Yeah.
So it gave the opportunity of lots of people to go and see it. And I think at the time, because of it being so out there and different, there would have been a lot of people talking about it. But like Kenzie said, I just don't think it's spoken about enough anymore.
Yeah.
Because I think what's positive about this film and what's good in the aspects that are good about it are things that people should be discussing. Because there's not enough cinema these days that it's made the way that this was in terms of the way it was approached in terms of style and the aesthetic. Like, but then again, people will be like, that's secondary to a good story. But sometimes people want something visually nice to look at, and then they don't really mind what's going on in the background. You get a lot of different people that like different things and look for different things in a film. But yeah, for me, I think it is a cult film now. Like looking at it now, maybe if we were doing this in 1997, 98 when it first came out, there'd be a lot of buzz because it's very late 90s, this film, so it was probably in and around then, and there was a lot of kind of bustling kind of new sci-fi and different stuff. When you had The Matrix come along very quickly, it's like that's on a different kind of its own different way,
different
but
slant
it's,
on it,
different slant. But yeah, no, I agree. I think this is a cult film. I was the sort of least positive, still positive about it at the start of the podcast. So yeah, this will make my top 100 though. I think it deserves to be there. And if I'm just compiling a list of films that are cult films, but I think you should go out and watch, this is easily on there. I think anybody listening to this podcast should definitely go out and check this out. Where would I put it? It's probably going to be a bit sort of higher up the list, not in terms of closer to 1, but closer to 100. I'll put it, let's go 50. Put it right in the middle at the minute. Because I'm interested to see, once we've done this poster, some of the films that I'll bring to the table that I would have higher up my list that are underappreciated cinema, specifically of the last sort of 15, 20 years, which is kind of lacking on this poster.
Yeah.
See, the things about this poster that we're looking at, a lot of the films were probably made between sort of like 1970 and sort of mid-2000s. You don't really get anything older or anything newer. There's a couple, but very, very few. If you look at this, you can see that where they're getting their sort of content from. So yeah, there you have it. That is us for this episode. Kenzie has said it's cult film and placed it 33 on his list of 100. Adam has also agreed that it should be on a list and has placed it. I don't know what list he would put it on.
Yeah.
I think this would make your top 100
easily make my
films
top
of,
100 films. Easily make that.
Yeah. So, but whether it would, if you were compiling a cult film, but no, you said you'd put it in your top 25. I've said it's a cult film. I placed it 50, solidly right in the middle. It could go up, it could go down when we review these lists at a later date. So yeah, and as always, if you would like to check out past episodes of the podcast, you can find us on all major streaming services, wherever you get your podcast from. If you'd like to go and give us a wee follow over on Instagram, you can find us just by searching Cult Film Cafe, and you can email the podcast at thecultfilmpodcast@gmail.com. And if you'd like to get in contact with me personally, you can find me over on Instagram at 081331 Productions, and you can find Kenzie at
Doge_dogs on Instagram.
I will happily plug his Twitch stream on this podcast because he has been streaming recently again. So yeah, if you're a bit of a gamer and you like to watch people play games, you can find Kenzie on Twitch.
At Cruto Stickman, I've been streaming Hitman and Fall Guys recently. If you are into those type of games,
yeah, so go and
jump in.
Yeah, go and give him a wee follow over on Twitch. And it's been an absolute pleasure having one of my closest friends on the podcast. So Adam, absolutely fabulous musician. This is where he's going to plug himself.
Yeah.
And hopefully get some of the small audience reach that we have. No,
Get
some
an
of
extra one listener a month on Spotify.
One listener a month, but yeah.
Kenzie, that's you. Well, one listen.
So Adam, tell all the folks where they can find you and what you're doing with yourself.
You can find me on Spotify, it's Adam Donaldson, or you can get me on Instagram, it's adam.studio.vox. But yeah, various tunes and musical project stuff going on there. If you want to have a wee listen and make yourself sad and depressed, or have a wee listen there, that'd be appreciated.
No, yeah, definitely go and check Adam out. Fantastic musician, does a lot of cool stuff over there, and check out his Instagram to see what he's up to. And he's just an all-round cool guy.
Cheers, Johnny.
So yeah,
what you after? What you after?
Absolutely nothing. Absolutely nothing.
You're overly nice.
No, not overly nice. Just being honest. Anyway, that is it for this episode of the podcast. It's been a pleasure as always breaking down another one of these movies with you. So as always, it's a goodbye from me.
It's a goodbye from me.
And goodbye from myself.
Podcast out, everybody.
See ya.